Welcome, everyone. Oh, you got it? Come on over. It's okay. We lost you in the walk. All right. So, welcome, everyone. My name is Jennifer Welch. I am the president and CEO of Planned Parenthood Illinois Action. I want to thank you for joining us so quickly on this dark day when the Supreme Court has stripped away our constitutional right to abortion. I am honored to stand here with reproductive rights leaders to voice our horror at the court's overturning of Roe v. Wade and Casey, robbing all people of their power to control their bodies, their lives, and their futures for generations to come. I am furious that the ultra-conservative justices have ignored half a century of settled law, as well as the vast majority of Americans who believe that abortion should remain legal. I want to be clear, abortion is safe and legal in Illinois, and it will remain legal in Illinois. Thanks to some of the folks we have here, like Senator Bush and Representative Cassidy, who sponsored the Reproductive Health Act, Illinois law defines abortion as health care, not criminal activity. This is not true for our neighbor states. Some have trigger laws, so abortion was immediately illegal as of this morning in some states, like our neighbors in Wisconsin. Others are quickly moving to severely restrict or outright ban access to care, stranding millions of people in a vast abortion desert, with Illinois serving as the only oasis for healthcare in the Midwest. Planned Parenthood of Illinois has been working for years to prepare for the additional anticipated desire for 20 to 30,000 patients who are now forced to flee their home states to get care here in Illinois. Planned Parenthood of Illinois has expanded the physical infrastructure of its health centers and telehealth access. It's added services such as offering abortion pill by mail to patients with an Illinois address. Planned Parenthood of Illinois has ramped up abortion navigation programs to help patients overcome all of these new barriers to care, because it recognizes that not everyone has the resources or the opportunity to travel for an abortion. Black and brown communities, people living in rural areas, people with low incomes, people with disabilities, all the folks who already face the most barriers to accessing healthcare, including abortion, will be most impacted by today's decision. Because traveling out of state for care puts additional burdens on patients who might have to take multiple days off of work or school, have childcare, traveling arrangements. There are just so many more steps, so many more hoops that patients now need to run through to get the care that they need. And when patients can't get care in their home state, it delays care and pushes them further into pregnancy, which might even more complicate their plans. Planned Parenthood of Illinois is preparing, and it can't do it alone. We call on our leaders in Springfield to take the necessary next steps for true, equitable access to abortion care. We must increase funding, cut red tape for abortion providers, and push forward all possible progress for abortion care in Illinois. We need more progress and more protections for providers who will be caring for this dramatic increase in patients in Illinois in our new post-Roe reality. Other critical access states like New York, California, and Oregon have invested millions of dollars in the work to protect and expand access, and Illinois must do the same. It is my pleasure to introduce Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who is one of our elected champions on this issue. Mayor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Last time we were gathered here together was after we saw the leaked opinion from the court. And welcome, Senator Jackie Collins. Last time we were here together, we saw the leaked opinion from the Supreme Court. And I think many of us felt at that point that it was like a gut punch, that we could not believe, even though we knew that this was the plotting and planning of those on the right, even though we knew what was going to happen when former President Trump appointed 3 ultra-conservative justices, that this day was going to come. It still felt like a horrible tragedy in our nation. And I'm not going to tell you that today feels any less than what it felt then, but the thing I think that time and distance has given us is resolve. So I'm here today, like so many others across our city and across our entire country, not just as a mayor and not just as a lawyer and a woman, but as a human being decrying the Supreme Court's decision to throw out the window 50 years of settled precedent. And let me just put that in real terms. This isn't just a legal nicety. We have, as Americans, formed our lives around the laws that have been come to us from the ultimate arbiter in our land as set up by the Constitution. And now we have women and girls, men and women, all across our country who are asking, what does this mean for me? And they're frightened and they're scared. So we're here not only to voice our opposition and our outrage to the Supreme Court's decision, but to reassure our brothers and sisters all across the country that Chicago and Illinois will remain a safe haven for all who value justice in our country. And let me talk through a little bit about what that is going to look like. And I want to urge folks, however you feel today, don't feel resigned, feel resolved. Feel resolved to fight and to organize and, importantly, to vote, because elections do matter. I'm going to remind you of what I said those few weeks ago. If Hillary Clinton had been the president, we wouldn't be sitting here having this horrible outcome in our country. If we had stood up and voted in the 2016 election, the horror of Donald Trump that we are still living through would not be something that we have to experience and understand and undertake. We have the ability, though, to right this wrong. And while this feels painful, this is not the end of the fight. It's a setback, to be sure, but we have to be resolved to fight on, because literally lives are hanging in the balance. We know this, but it bears repeating. For almost 50 years, Roe v. Wade has paved the way for people in need of reproductive care to access safe abortions and health care and decide for themselves the circumstances under which they will choose to bear children or not. And now that undeniable human right will be stripped away for far too many. And let's get one thing very clear. This isn't just a decision about abortion. It's not, and it's never been, just about the sanctity of life or even children. It's a much bigger and frankly scarier reality than that. And instead, part of a long, demented game that a certain faction in our country has been playing to stop at nothing, to access power and dominion over other people, especially women and people of color. And let's be clear about who these people are. This is the same crowd that is making it harder to vote everywhere across our country. They're attacking transgender children, for God's sake, and their families, and they want to forbid any of us from dare saying gay. They have been voting people in at all levels of government, from school boards to legislatures to governorships and beyond, empowering people who are beholden to their worldview, a worldview that turns back the clock, where women have no control over their own bodies, but their lives, and where people of color have no rights to vote or economic autonomy, where members of the LGBTQ plus community, my community, are demonized, shunned, and pushed back into the closet. This is not the America of 2022, and we refuse to roll back the clock. Now, as predicted, the Supreme Court is already considering using this decision as precedent to gut the legal underpinnings used to protect so many other gender-based discrimination that we have enjoyed freedom from over the last 50 years. And look no further than Clarence Thomas's concurring opinion, which shows the conservative playbook. I'm looking at page 3 of his concurring opinion. Justice Thomas says, we need to reconsider Griswold. Well, in simple language, folks, that's the right to access to contraception. He says that we should reconsider Lawrence. That is laws that were criminalizing men for engaging in consenting sex. That's what he's talking about. And, of course, he says we should reconsider Obergefell. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, the right to same-gender marriage. So make no mistake about it. This decision today has much wider and much larger implications. That means that we must make sure that we're organized. And as Jennifer said, let's talk in practical terms and put a face on who is going to be hurt by this decision. Many of us, but the immediate impact will be disproportionately felt by poor and low-income women, women without access to health care, women of color, and women who are just plain scared. For women of color and poor women, the impact will obviously be devastating, something that clearly the court cared not one whit about. Make no mistake, Roe v. Wade never fully protected these women anyway, as they always struggled to access and pay for the health care that they're needed. Thank God for organizations like Planned Parenthood and the Chicago Abortion Fund who try to level the playing field for access for these women. But over the past 50 years, class and race have continued to work against the most vulnerable women in our society. And the Supreme Court's decision reversing Roe v. Wade and Casey means that we must take action and we must continue to fight for what's right. Let me just say this. Justice and freedom are core tenets of our American democracy. Now, they haven't always been given to all of us at the same time, but they are something that we must believe in as Americans. And we cannot give up on our American experiment. Our democracy depends upon us all being part of the equation. And as public and private institutions, we have a responsibility to protect and advance these tenets in partnership with the communities that we all serve. This past May, when we saw that draft opinion, we made, as a city of Chicago, a deep commitment to fulfilling this responsibility through our Justice for All pledge. This pledge expresses our citywide promise that here in Chicago, we will continue to fight for the right to choose, no matter what the Supreme Court says or does, and we are more resolved than ever in light of today's decision. And I want to underscore a point that Jennifer made. Abortion and access to reproductive health care remains legal in Chicago and Illinois, and it's never, ever going to be any different. We will continue to be an oasis, a beacon in the surrounding area and across our country to make sure that people who need access to reproductive health care can get it in our city, in our state, and we are going to provide even additional resources to make sure that that happens. I announced back in May that we put down a $500,000 down payment to help the clinicians offset the expenses of travel and lodging and other barriers for access. We're not going to move back. And we're going to call upon the General Assembly, if there is a special session, to make sure that they pick up that call and do their part also. Because, again, lives hang in the balance. Let me just say in closing, as discouraging as today's decision is, I, for one, am resolved. I, for one, am ready to fight. And I know the women that stand with me here today feel exactly the same way. We are representative of literally millions of women who understand the importance of this decision, who understand and will not go take steps back. We're not going to be second-class citizens again in this country. We've come too far. We've fought too many battles. This is another one that we will fight. And when we fight, united, women and our allies, we will win. So let me now bring to the podium somebody who also has been in this fight. That's Alicia Hurtado from the Chicago Abortion Fund. Alicia.
Hi, everyone. My name's Alicia Hurtado. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns. I'm the Communications and Advocacy Associate and a case manager at the Chicago Abortion Fund, or CAF. The mission of the Chicago Abortion Fund is to advance reproductive autonomy and justice for everyone by providing financial, logistical, and emotional support to people seeking abortion services, and by building collective power and fostering partnerships for political and cultural change. At CAF, we provide direct funding to over 55 partner clinics across 7 states in the Midwest for appointments, and we offer intensive logistical support and case management to our callers. We fund appointments, we do insurance counseling, we pay for travel by bus, train, and plane. We provide childcare and meals. We work together with our callers to see what they need and what they are facing, and then we work to remove those barriers. We provide the support with affirmation, love, and care, and we strive to be a source of reassurance in the face of an abortion access landscape that we are only further seeing today can be chaotic and hostile. As a case manager, I've supported parents, grandparents, couples, people younger than me, people older than me. There's no single experience of people who are seeking abortion care, and no single identity or experience for people who are seeking support from abortion funds. And this isn't just about choice. This isn't just about legality. Even under Roe v. Wade, abortion was not accessible for all. The Chicago Abortion Fund and other abortion funds are a testament to the fact that people have been facing legal, financial, logistical, and other barriers to care. With this decision and the subsequent bans that have already or likely will criminalize abortion in over half of states in the United States, these barriers will only be more widespread and felt, especially by those who can't afford or do not have the ability to cross state lines for their abortions. Communities of color, low-income communities, queer and trans people, young people, disabled people, and other marginalized groups already are disproportionately impacted by barriers. And we know that this attack on our autonomy will only deepen these disparities in care access. In 2020, almost 10,000 people crossed state lines to have an abortion in Illinois. 10,000 people, each with a unique story and experience, came into our state to access common, safe, and essential health care. This came after a wave of bans in 2019 that also caused our caller numbers to jump drastically. To put things in perspective, in 2018, the Chicago Abortion Fund supported less than 200 callers. Now we support that many people in under 2 weeks. Last year, we supported almost 3,000 people, and this year already we've heard from 2,300, putting us on track to support the most people in CAF's history. Illinois has long been a receiving state for people seeking care. The majority of callers that we hear from are from outside of Illinois, and it has been that way for years. As states across the country are able to pass abortion bans, experts predict that over 20,000 more people will be forced to come into our state to travel to access abortion care annually. This means they're facing travel costs, childcare, job constraints, and procedure costs that aren't covered by their health insurance. Illinois must be prepared to receive this influx of people who need care. We need Illinois to join other states in making sure there's capacity for the surge of patients that will come to us for care. This is no longer a hypothetical. This is our reality. As our governor has said today, he will protect the rights of people in Illinois and anyone forced to travel for care. It's now time to make that right accessible by expanding the pool of healthcare professionals who can provide abortion care, and to dedicate funding for providers, abortion funds, and logistical support groups. No one should have to travel for healthcare, but they already do, and there will be more annually coming to Illinois. We need to be ready. CAF is ready, but we need support, real support, and we need all of us. We need our legislators, and we need you. This means breaking down abortion stigma within your community and saying the word abortion. This means calling on our lawmakers to not only protect abortion access, but to expand it. This means identifying and supporting the providers at Planned Parenthood clinics, independent clinics and hospitals, clinic escort networks, and abortion funds that are doing work in your communities. set up a monthly donation, subscribe to newsletters, and follow social media to stay updated on calls to action. This fight is not new, but we need our community to stay with us today and to stay with us for the long haul as we work towards abortion access and then to abortion justice for all. Thank you.
Hi, State Senator Melinda Bush. I'm sorry to be here today. It's a very dark day for us here in the United States. When people tell you who they are, believe them. Believe them. What they just told us is there's a war going on in this country. Absolutely, make no mistake about it. This was planned as much as they sat and drew out the roadmap. Be clear. I was a young woman in the 1970s and marched for reproductive health rights. I was around when Roe v. Wade was passed. And yeah, I'm one of those 4 women that has had an abortion. And I can tell you, they are coming for our rights. Be absolutely clear. And I am very proud of what we've done here in Illinois, but it's not enough. We are 1 election away from being like any other state. 1 election away. For those people who couldn't vote for Hillary Clinton because they didn't like her, here's where we are. Who in this room believed Donald Trump would be president of the United States and put those Supreme Court justices who lied in their hearings about who they were and what they would do? Who believed that would happen? None of us. So as we stand here, we are not safe in Illinois. We have a governor that stands with us. We have incredible advocacy organizations like Planned Parenthood, the ACLU. They stand with us. They fight for these rights. But be clear, we have Supreme Court races ourselves. In the 1st and 2nd District, if we lose one of them, we can lose control of the Supreme Court here in the state of Illinois. And that means your state rights could be overturned. I want you to just let that settle in for a moment. This is a war, and we are not waving the white flag. They dropped a bomb today. And I'm not going to compare this to certainly the Ukraine. But what those people did when somebody says we're taking away your goddamn rights, they said, not in my country. And I urge all of us to say, now is not the time to bury your head in the sands. Now is not the time to rest safely here in the state of Illinois. Now is the time to stand up and say, you're not taking my rights back. You are not taking rights of the LGBT community back. You are not moving us back to the 1950s. I'm here to tell you, I am not chattel, and I won't be treated like it. I want to thank you for being here today, but literally, every one of us standing here knows our rights are just moments away from changing, and don't think it can't happen here. Thanks. And now I get to introduce Kelly Cassidy. Kelly and I certainly are proud of the work we did together to pass the Reproductive Health Act in the state of Illinois, but there's got to be more, and we are not done.
Good afternoon. I am Kelly Cassidy. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the state representative of the 14th District. I can't help but think about and imagine a person sitting in a waiting room this morning who maybe had to go through lots and lots of hoops to get that appointment, only to learn the rug was just pulled out from under them. By the grace of God and a couple of good elections, that didn't happen in Illinois today. Abortion remains legal in Illinois. If you have an appointment, keep it. If you're making an appointment, go for it. I've had so many calls today, and on my way here, I heard from my son, who's a college student here in Chicago, where his friends are coming to him freaking out because they're from Missouri and Indiana and Wisconsin, and they don't know what it means for them. So I'm about to parent a whole lot more kids. We can't go back. We can't allow the war that we see playing out around us, a war attacking bodily autonomy of all varieties. Whether we're talking about a woman in Oklahoma trying to get an abortion, a trans person in Indiana trying to find abortion care, a family in Alabama accessing gender-affirming care for their kid, facing child abuse allegations as a result. We made a point of building a firewall around Illinois, and that firewall is holding, but it's only as strong as the next election. And the governor this morning announced that we will be coming back into session to look at what we can be doing beyond the firewall. And I'm ready. We must protect access to reproductive health care and gender-affirming care in Illinois and fulfill our promise to be a safe haven. So whenever the call comes, I know that my badass sister Melinda and Jackie and the other partners that built the firewall are ready to build those protections for our residents and those inbound patients. We know how to do this. We are a shining example in the Midwest. I'm part of a war room of legislators nationally. And we were broken up into expansive states, restrictive states, and then broken down by region. Well, I didn't have a region for expansive states. There was West Coast and East Coast, and then there's Illinois. And they're all looking at us. And so those predictions of 20,000 are our best guess. It could be a great deal higher. And so we do have to put those tools into place. I am ready. I am resolved. And I'm going to take my rage to the voting booth. And I encourage everyone to do so. Melinda mentioned those 2 Supreme Court cases, or 2 Supreme Court races. Do not sleep on these rights. It is as simple as losing one of those seats, and it all can go away. We have built very intentional protections in Illinois with the Reproductive Health Act, with being the last state to pass marriage equality via legislation. So that to-do list that Clarence Thomas put in his concurring opinion, if they do that, and we don't win these Supreme Court seats, they can overturn the RHA. They can overturn marriage equality. They can overturn our civil rights protections. It's all on the line. So if you do nothing else between now and Tuesday and between now and November, please take the time to vote. I beg you. I would drop to my knees and beg if I could. I wouldn't be able to get up.
We wouldn't see you.
Yes, you would. Please, I beg you, vote. Vote like your life depends on it. Vote like my life depends on it, because it does. Thank you.
Thank you. We're happy to take questions on this topic. There's plenty to talk about.
Thank you very much. We can start off with Sophie from the Sun-Times and kick it off down the line. Doug, go ahead. Kaylee, Harold. Sorry, go on.
My question's for the mayor. Mayor, you said that there are more resources to come in terms of supporting patients and providers. Yeah. Obviously, Governor J.B. Pritzker calling for a special session. Other than, calling on the General Assembly, what can the City of Chicago, the City Council do to provide more resources? Is $500,000 enough, given now, half the states planning to ban or restrict abortion?
Yeah, well, when we announced the $500,000, I said very clearly it's a down payment, and that's precisely what it is. I also said at the time that in formulating our budget for 2023, we will be looking specifically to ask the City Council to approve other resources. I think we have to listen to the providers and understand specifically what their needs will be, but that's a conversation that really started as soon as we saw that draft opinion and is ongoing. I think we have to do much more, and I'm hoping, frankly, that one of the items on the table for the special session is that. So it's making sure that we've got resources for people to travel, for lodging, for childcare, but it also, frankly, for security. We've got to make sure and be conscious of the fact that these clinics and the clinicians themselves are going to face even, I think, heightened challenges. We've made sure as a city that we've been in contact with the various clinics, paying special attention by them. We instituted those protocols again today when we saw the news come out from the Supreme Court. But there's a lot of different factors and considerations that all cost money and need resources, and these providers shouldn't be footing the bill by themselves. We've got to step up as a city government, as a state government, as a county government, and make sure that we're doing our part as well.
Okay, so just quick follow-up on my other question. So no specific immediate timetable for an increase to that 500,000 other than, the upcoming.
No, what we're going to continue to do is talk to the providers, the people that are closest to this, to understand what their needs are and what their pain points are. If we need to do something before next year's budget is passed, certainly we're open to that. And again, I'm going to urge my colleagues in the General Assembly to engage in the same conversation that I know that they already are, to talk to providers across the state and see what is the immediate need and how can we best fulfill it. That's critically important, but we don't move without the people who are closest to the solutions. We've got to move in concert together.
Okay, and then obviously a lot of enraged Chicagoans. You heard it from several lawmakers today. Language that this is a war on people's rights. Earlier, President Biden echoed that sentiment, but urged peaceful protest. Can you be specific about what actions, other than voting in the upcoming elections, you're calling on Chicagoans to take?
Well, listen, I want to underscore what my friend Kelly Cassidy said. Voting matters. And part of the reason I referred back to 2016 is we heard so many people, particularly on the left, say, elections don't matter, this isn't my thing, I'm not going to vote. And look where we are as a result of that. That is, what we got today is a direct result of people staying home and not voting and not exercising the most patriotic thing that we can do in a democracy, which is voting. So I don't want to pass that off as something trivial. It's really important. Please, please.
By the way, the roadmap that got us here counted on people not voting. They were counting on us to say, but her emails. They were counting on us to stay home. That was part of the plan. So everyone who says voting didn't matter or doesn't matter, or I voted once and it didn't work, was a part of their plan.
I mean,
Say
it again.
To the second part of my question, other than voting, what specific actions are you calling on Chicagoans to take for the right wing?
Look, we have a long tradition of peaceful protests in this city, and I think we've got to let our voices heard. I think Representative Cassidy is 100% right. Apathy and silence is complicity, and we have to understand that. So being active, being engaged, making sure that the organizations that are on the front lines have the resources they need to be able to handle what I think is going to be a surge, and frankly was already a surge pre the leaking of the draft opinion. The providers here can speak more to it, but we already saw women coming from Texas, for example, after the Supreme Court allowed that onerous abortion restriction law to go into effect. This is real. This surge is happening, and we need to make sure that we are ready, absolutely voting, peaceful protests, but making sure that the providers have the resources they need to be able to respond to this increased need. Do you want to speak to that issue?
Yeah, I think what I would add is the language of war. I think we see it being thrown around a lot in terms of like a culture war, and I feel like, to me, the decision today is a legacy of voting, but also a deeper legacy of white supremacy and a deeper legacy of an attack on people's autonomy, on criminalizing people for their reproductive choices, and also just a general legacy of criminalizing Black and brown bodies in our country. And I think that in some ways, we can think of an expanding definition of violence. Violence isn't constrained. I guess I would say the Supreme Court's decision today is violence. Colonization, racism, systemic violence is, we can just say it's violence, and that requires people to speak out and really dismantle that within their own communities, as well as on, I guess, levels that we can think of in terms of the state legislature and even on a national level. But this isn't just about voting. It's also about mobilizing your communities to speak out, mobilizing your communities to talk about abortion, talk about racism frankly and candidly, and to really support each other in building safe communities and building communities where we have access to healthcare, where we have access to the things that we need, rather than calling for more criminalization, calling for people to, in reference to SB 8 in the Texas bill, to criminalize people who are just trying to provide care. And this, we can see that in a lot of different ways, but I think in terms of what I am hoping for my communities, for the people that are in my life following this decision, is that people don't just plug in today. People are committing to make a longer and uncomfortable, even sometimes, commitment to dismantling white supremacy within themselves, white supremacy within their communities, and the ways that we see white supremacy leaking into all facets of our health and our safety and our relationships with other people.
Thank you.
Mayor, regarding the city-funded efforts to support people from out of state, what specific states do you want to offer transportation to Chicago?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Regarding the
Yeah.
city-funded efforts, what specific states do you want to offer transportation to Chicago from? Where would they stay, and when would that start?
Well, we don't make those decisions. We're providing the information or the resources to the providers. They're closest to it. They understand what their individual clients need. And obviously, a lot of these things have to be done on an individualized basis. So we're not providing, as the city of Chicago, the transportation and the lodging. We're empowering the clinicians who are taking those calls, who are providing those frontline services with the resources they need. I think that's the best way for us to be most impactful.
Thank you.
Do you want to talk about what states you would offer those transportation services for?
Well, at Planned Parenthood of Illinois, we have welcomed patients from states all over the country, and we have seen an increased number of patients from other states. In fact, last month was our highest number of out-of-state patients than ever before, from patients as far away as Texas and Oklahoma and Missouri. And so we really are fortunate to work with partners like CAF and other organizations like the Midwest Access Coalition to bring patients in for care wherever they're from. Not with a focus on any particular state, but with a focus on serving the patients who need care.
If I could follow up.
I'm sorry.
Are you worried about red states going after Chicago or Planned Parenthood, especially if minors are patients?
So it's interesting, the question of other states trying to hold Illinois responsible for actions that are legal in our state, it keeps coming up, but we don't have an example of that. Cannabis is legal in Illinois and not in other states. And there's no opportunity for other states to have criminal jurisdiction over us in Illinois. So we are not concerned about that. We're looking at it, but there's no evidence of that so far on any other topic.
Thank you. Mark Rivera?
This could be for you, Jennifer, as well. As an island of abortion rights in the Midwest, how many people are you expecting in this next few months, few years, in the influx that you're seeing?
With all of the states around us having more restrictions or outright bans, we anticipate 20,000 to 30,000 additional abortion patients per year.
question, but I think some of these states have bounty hunter laws, the Oklahoma provision, the Texas provisions.
Right.
And while cannabis is something you consume in Illinois and not take it back to Texas with you, having had an abortion is something you take back with you when you go home. Is that a consideration as far as providing care for out-of-state patients? How do we handle people who might be prosecuted upon their return? Are we doing anything to protect them or shield them?
Well, look, here's what I will say. I mean, think about the absurdity of that. Someone who leaves the state to get health care because they can't get it in their home state, and they're going to criminalize them, and we're going to incentivize bounties for them. I mean, think about the absurdity of that. This is America. This is America in 2022. This is not America in 1822, right? When I hear that, that harbors back to a horrible, dark, original sin in our country of slavery and people leaving states where they were enslaved to find freedom. So we have to be real careful in talking about those kinds of laws. But let me just tell you this. If for some reason this Supreme Court upholds those laws, then I'm going to use that same precedent to sue states like Indiana, like other states that are bringing illegal guns into my city and my state with reckless abandon and taking lives. So careful what you wish for in those other states. This is America. We've got to stand for justice and freedom for all. And what we should not be doing is demonizing and incentivizing people to deprive people of basic human rights like access to health care. And if that's where we're going, there's a lot of other ways we can use that tool pointed in the other direction.
Sabrina, CBS? Go ahead.
So just specifically to the question of what we can do for those patients when they go home, there's obviously limits on what we can do about when they leave our borders. But part of the mission of this special session will be to make sure that we've got all the protections in place that we can, looking at like what Connecticut has done, New York has done, California has done, states that were in session longer than we were, had an opportunity to put some of those protections into place. So I'm mission focused on making sure that what we do in special session is creating protections for patients and providers who are here for reproductive health care or gender affirming care so that we can protect them while they're within our state.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sabrina, CBS?
My question is for the mayor. If you could speak directly to a woman watching this in the surrounding state, just to summarize what you're willing to offer people coming here as a safe haven, what would you tell?
Well, exactly that. Come to Chicago. We will protect you. We will make sure that your rights are respected. We will make sure that you get access to the health care that you deserve, and we will protect you on the back end. Look, I think there's got to be a serious conversation here in Illinois and in Chicago in particular about what we need to do to promote ourselves as a place that is a safe haven, where we respect other people's rights. This isn't just a business case, and there's plenty to do there. This isn't about lowering trade shows and conventions. This is about who do you want to be? What kind of life do you want to live? And do you want to live a life in freedom? That is what we offer here in Chicago and Illinois. And I think that's going to resonate with a lot of other people. You know, we do have, I think, a legitimate concern about what happens to the people that are coming here to seek services when they go back to their home state. Frankly, I'd make the argument, don't go back. Don't go back. Stay here. Stay here where you can live your life in freedom. And look, I'm mindful of the fact that we're on the cusp of the final weekend of Pride. And the one thing that I see every single time I go to an event, and particularly when I go to a public event, is we see people coming all across our region and really the country to be here in Chicago because we are a safe haven for people in the LGBTQ plus community that may not feel like they can walk down the street hand in hand or arm in arm with the person that they love, and just for a moment feel like they can come here to live their true, authentic life. That's where we're at, and that's what we offer. All of us are deeply committed to making sure that women who are worried and are scared, no matter where they live, know that they can come to our city and our state and be protected and safe. We have an obligation, but also an opportunity to make sure we tell the nation that in Chicago, If you are a woman or a person otherwise seeking reproductive health care, look no further than right here in Chicago and Illinois. We will make sure that your passage is safe, that you can live your life without fear of retribution. Thank you.
Aaron, Daily Line.
Also for the mayor. So Alderman Lozano Rodriguez Sanchez and Alderman Carlos Mendoza said on social media they're working on an ordinance to ensure Chicagoans abortion safe place for people. Why is it important, in addition to setting money aside and putting resources toward safe abortions, why is it important to also pass legislation that, or ordinances or resolutions saying?
Well, I think it's important to have that legislation at the state level. And we are secure as a state, and as Representative Cassidy and Senator Bush said, we built that firewall here, right? So that's critically important. I haven't heard anything from the aldermen. I hope they will work collaboratively with the mayor's office and the rest of our colleagues. But the most important thing is we make sure that two things, and you heard it both today. Number one, that the firewall holds, and that we make sure those Supreme Court races are decided in the right way. Because literally, I think Senator Bush was 1,000% right. We are one Supreme Court justice away in Illinois from having a very different conversation. We cannot afford to go back. So I encourage people, don't skip that place on the ballot. When you go to vote, and please do vote, make sure that you educate yourself and make sure that you're voting for candidates who reflect your values. And in this time specifically, candidates who respect the right for women to make the decisions for themselves about the circumstances under which they will bear children. This is not a nicety. This is not a theoretical notion now. The Supreme Court's decision today made this crystal clear for all of us. Our rights are on the ballot like never before. And we've got to make sure that we do the right thing here, and then make sure that the clinicians have the resources they need to be able to provide the services.
Last question.
Thanks, Mary. Going all the way to the back, Mallory, WLS.
Hi, this is for the mayor. What words of encouragement or words of advice can you give to women who have already had abortions and are seeing this decision coming down from SCOTUS and are feeling even more stigmatized and even more in the background of the issue that they've already made stigmatized?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there are legions of women who made that tough decision. What I would say is that to the extent that you feel comfortable, share your story. And why I think that that's important is we talk about this in really a vacuum and in hypotheticals. And there are women that we all know who have made that decision, and their life has been changed for the better as a result of that. No one makes that decision lightly. No one does it without a lot of deep thought, and if they're people of faith, a lot of prayer. But I think just frankly, as in back in the day, we were talking about the LGBTQ community to come out, and the reason is because we wanted to show that truly we are everywhere. This decision has affected women for generations. And I think it is time. We've gotten comfortable because we felt our rights are secure. But for those women who made that courageous decision and feel comfortable, I urge them, whether it's publicly or in private conversations, talk about your own experience and make sure you're touching people who may only think about this in the abstract, may only think that this is just elected officials rattling the saber or providers. No, this is about the women and their lives. And, Jennifer and I were talking before this started, so I'm going to steal something that she pointed out. If you look at the beginning of the dissent by the dissenting justices, one of the things that they made clear, which is a really poignant point, with this decision today, when women and girls engage in a sex act, which should be a beautiful, consenting thing, with this decision, you are, in effect, having the possibility of giving up your own autonomy by engaging in a sex act. That's not something anybody thinks about in that moment. But this decision by Roe really calls into question whether or not the choice can be consensual when, if, as the court has written, essentially From the moment that you engage in that sex act, you give up your rights as an independent, freestanding individual. That's a horrifying thought. So we've got to make sure that people educate themselves about what's at stake, that they do vote, because voting absolutely does matter. As I said before, it is the most patriotic and powerful thing that we can do. But we also need to make sure that for those women who need access to these services, that they never go without. They never second guess or question themselves, because they know that a place like Chicago and other places across the country, that we are on their side, that we are always going to have their back, that we will be here to protect them. That's critically important.
Thank you all. Thank you. No.
What do you have to say to taxpayers who are concerned that people in Illinois, we're moving towards them paying for abortions?
Well, look, I hear you loud and clear, but this isn't just about a political decision. This isn't partisanship. This is a basic human right, which is access to the full range of health care. We have to do this, because if we don't, people will die. People will get sick. And the cost and the burden of those who are only thinking about this in terms of dollars and cents will be that much more. We have an obligation to make sure that access to health care is real, and that the only way we can do that is we've got to fund it. And I'm not backing away from that right and that obligation. I know no one else here who will do that as well.